right, so we've got a lot to unpack with this one.
Yeah.
You gave me quite the reading list for this deep dive.
Duckles.
I gotta say, cracking open Jon Mills's 2024 book, what was it called? New End of the World, Civilization and Its Fate.
Yeah.
Really had me, well, it had me feeling a lot of things. Like, it's not exactly light reading,
Oh,
right?
no, it's pretty intense stuff.
Yeah, a real deep dive into all the ways things could go wrong for, well, for humanity, basically.
Yeah, and I think what makes Mills' book so fascinating, so timely, is that he goes beyond just listing the threats, you know?
Right.
Like, he really digs into the psychology of it all, the social dynamics. He's trying to understand not just civilization might end, but, like, are we almost hardwired to self-destruct?
It really makes you think, huh?
Yeah.
Like, are we our own worst enemy?
It's a question that's been around forever, right?
Right.
But Mills, he doesn't beat around the bush, you know?
No, he just...
He kicks things off with these really sobering observations from, like, leading experts.
Yeah.
Like, right from the get-go, he brings in perspectives from folks like Vomik Volkan, he's a psychiatrist,
Okay.
and Robert Fowler, the philosopher.
I know his work.
Yeah, to kind of set the stage, and they both highlight this almost paradoxical problem we're facing.
It's like, we're more aware than ever of the dangers.
Right.
Climate change, social unrest, all of it. But
are we really doing anything about it?
yeah, that's the thing. We're not exactly rushing to fix things.
No, not really. And Vulcan, he connects this to our fear of death, which
I mean, it makes sense,
right? It makes
Yeah.
it's like this deep-seated fear that
Yeah.
can be paralyzing.
Right.
It keeps us from making the tough choices, the ones we need to make for long-term survival.
It's easier to just, like, bury your head in the sand, right?
Exactly. Ignorance is bliss, as they say, but
Not this time.
not this time.
That really resonated with me because I think we all do it to an extent.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, when you've got a million things to do
Uh-huh.
and you just end up scrolling through your phone instead of,
Procrastination.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a universal struggle.
Except in this case, the stakes are just a little bit higher.
Just a tad.
We're going to talk about the fate of civilization here.
Yeah. No pressure.
Okay.
But that's where Fowler comes in, and he reminds us that, the future isn't predetermined.
Okay.
We have this incredible capacity for both creation and destruction.
Right.
It all depends on the choices we make, both individually and as a society.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is.
But he's right. We're not just passive bystanders.
No, we're active participants, whether we realize it or not.
And that's where Mills really starts to, unpack these interconnected threats.
Yeah, he lays it all out.
It's not just one thing that could end us, right?
Right.
It's this whole, complex web of challenges.
Exactly, all feeding off each other.
And he starts with what a lot of people would say is the biggest threat right now. The environmental catastrophe.
It's the big one.
Yeah. And we're not just talking about the planet getting a little warmer.
Right.
We're talking about, melting ice caps.
Sea levels rising.
Exactly. Extreme weather events becoming the norm.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg, literally.
So it's not just about saving the polar bears anymore.
It's about saving ourselves.
From the chain reaction.
Exactly. A destabilized climate could unleash.
Wow. Okay. So we've got that to look forward to.
Chuckles. Well, and then you add to that the ever-growing pressure of population growth.
Right, because there's more of us all the time.
8 billion people on the planet right now.
8 billion.
8 billion, and projections show that number could hit 10 billion by 2050.
See, that's what gets me.
It's a lot of mouths to feed.
And it's a lot of pressure on the planet, especially with, climate change making things like food and water more scarce.
Absolutely. It's a recipe for disaster.
Right. Scarcity, competition, conflict. It's like a runaway train.
It's like a domino effect.
And yet, in the face of all of this, Mills says we often find ourselves in, and this is his term, bystander mode.
Bystander mode, yeah.
And he really dives into the psychological reasons for this inaction.
Which is fascinating and a little unsettling, to be honest.
It's like that saying, everybody thinks somebody else will do it.
Right, but what happens when nobody does?
Exactly. We become paralyzed, right? Like we feel helpless.
We're bombarded with so much information about these huge problems, it's easy to feel like anything we do is meaningless.
Or we tell ourselves it can't be that bad.
Denial is a powerful drug.
Yeah. But Mills, he doesn't let us off the hook that easily.
No, he doesn't.
He's got these uncomfortable parallels to historical examples.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think about the Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide.
The moments where humanity failed.
Exactly. And it wasn't just, the leaders. It was ordinary people who didn't recognize the urgency and act.
It makes you wonder, are we doomed to repeat these patterns?
Right.
Because even when we try to address these global challenges, we tend to stumble over our own, tribal instincts.
You mean that us versus them mentality?
Exactly.
It's like it's hardwired into us.
It's primal.
Like even when we have a shared interest, like, I don't know, not destroying the planet,
jackals.
those deeply ingrained prejudices,
They get in the way.
it's really sobering, Are we hardwired for conflict even when we're facing a common enemy?
It's a question worth exploring.
Yeah, it is. Feels like we're stuck.
Yeah, kind of like this loop.
Right. And Mills, he cites up some pretty,
Intense examples.
yeah, to kind of like illustrate that point.
Well, he talks about John Calhoun's rat studies.
Oh yeah, the rat utopia experiment, right?
Right.
That always just like freaks me out to think about.
That's a little unsettling.
It really is. You got these rats, right? And they're living in like what seems like paradise.
Cool utopia.
Plenty of food, no predators, just space to live, space to breed.
Ideal condition.
You'd think they'd thrive, right?
Logically, yeah.
Yeah.
But the population grows.
Things go south.
Yeah.
Overcrowding, it leads to all these problems.
Right. Social breakdown.
Violence, even cannibalism.
It's messed up.
And eventually,
Yeah.
the population crashes.
Wow.
Even with everything they need, they self-destruct.
It's like a dystopian novel or something.
Right. But it's real.
And it makes you wonder, are we that different?
That's the question, isn't it?
Like, even if we solve climate change, even if we figure out sustainability.
Could our own numbers be our downfall?
Yeah, like, is there a tipping point?
It's kind of impossible.
And then on top of all of that, Mills throws in the doomsday argument.
Yes, the doomsday argument.
That one really, had my head spinning.
It's a bit of a mind bender.
It is. Okay, so it's a statistical prediction, right?
Essentially, yeah. And it's saying, because you're more likely to be alive in the middle of a species' lifespan than at the very beginning or the very end.
Statistically speaking.
There's a higher probability that that humanity's end is closer than we might think.
It's a sobering thought, for sure.
So it's not just like doom and gloom scenarios, it's math.
In a way, yeah.
That's both fascinating and terrifying.
It's definitely thought-provoking.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, why are we so drawn to the end of the world?
Why are we fascinated by the apocalypse?
Right. Is it just like morbid curiosity?
Maybe?
Or is there something more to it?
Well, Mills seems to think so.
Okay, what does he say?
He talks about the role of apocalyptic thinking,
Okay.
throughout history, across cultures.
Interesting.
Maybe there's certain comfort in imagining a defined ending.
Instead of just like endless uncertainty
Exactly. Or maybe it's a way to cope with anxiety.
about the world being so complicated and fragile
Right. It's easier to imagine a dramatic ending.
than a slow, messy decline.
It's definitely easier to process.
So what are we supposed to do with all of this? I mean, it's easy to just feel overwhelmed, right?
Well, I think that's where Mills wants us to shift our thinking.
Okay, how so?
It's not about dwelling in despair, but rather confronting a range of possible futures.
So like both the good and the bad.
Exactly. He covers it all.
He does. He covers super intelligent AI, nanotechnology being weaponized.
The threat of nuclear war, global totalitarianism.
It's a lot.
It is, but he also explores some glimmers of hope.
Okay, like what?
Well, he talks about the power of collective action.
Right, like the youth climate movement.
Exactly. People coming together to demand change.
You gotta admit, it's pretty inspiring seeing those young people. Like, they're not waiting around for someone else to fix things.
No, they're taking charge.
They're raising their voices. They want action.
It's a powerful reminder that change is possible.
It really is.
And that each generation has a responsibility to leave the world a little better.
Right, to try, at least. Speaking of which, Mills talks about the
Svalbard Global Seed Vault.
Yes, that's what it was called. The seed bank in Norway.
A giant vault built to preserve biodiversity.
In case of a global catastrophe.
It's like an insurance policy for the planet.
Kind of a weird mix of hope and despair, right?
So,
Like, it's hopeful that we're trying to preserve things.
here.
But also kind of depressing that we're even preparing for something like that.
I see your point.
It's like, are things really that dire?
Well, I think the point is we don't know for sure.
Right.
But it's better to be prepared than not, right?
True.
And I think that's what Mills really wants us to take away from all of this.
Okay, what's that?
We can't just be passive.
Right. We can't just wait for the future to happen to us.
We have to be active participants in shaping the world we want to live in.
Easier said than done? Sometimes.
No argument there.
But, okay, so where do we even begin? I mean, we've talked about runaway rat populations, global seed banks. Like, what's the takeaway for the average person listening to this?
Well, I think the key takeaway is this. The future isn't fixed.
But
It's not set in stone. Mills doesn't give us easy answers.
no, he doesn't.
But he does give us the questions we need to be asking.
Like, what does it mean to overcome our self-destructive tendencies?
Exactly. Is it individual change? Systemic change? Both.
Those are some big questions.
They are, but they're the ones we need to be grappling with.
If we want a chance at getting this whole future thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around.
He really is.
Mills, I mean, he really gets you thinking about the big picture.
He does, and, amidst all this talk of doom and gloom,
Right.
he does give us some tools, right, to kind of navigate all of this.
Okay, like what? Give me some hope here.
Well, he really stresses the importance of critical thinking,
Okay.
especially now, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we're bombarded with information.
Right, more than ever.
It's easy to just get swept up in fear-mongering headlines.
Or like those overly simplistic solutions that never really get at the root of the problem.
Exactly. So we really need to be, discerning
Yeah.
about the information we consume.
So build those critical thinking muscles.
Exactly.
Question everything, right?
Question everything.
Consider different sides.
Absolutely.
Don't just accept things at face value.
It's so easy to just hit that share button, but we have to pause
We really do.
and think critically.
And on top of that, there's the whole media literacy piece, right? Being able to spot bias.
Understanding how information is being framed.
Right, all of it.
We can't just be passive consumers of information anymore.
It's like we have to be detectives almost.
In a way, yeah.
Sifting through everything.
Separating fact from fiction.
Truth from, well, everything else.
It's more important now than ever.
But, okay, even if we get good at all of that, even if we're thinking critically and we're media literate, I mean, it still feels like there's these huge forces at play. Like, what can one person really do?
Well, and that's where Mills brings us back to empowerment. He reminds us that we're not powerless.
We're not.
No, we have a voice.
Okay.
We have agency.
So what, get involved?
Get involved. Absolutely.
Okay.
Engage in dialogue. Advocate for change.
Don't just sit there, do something.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay, I can get behind that.
Find the organizations that resonate with you.
Right. The ones that are working on solutions.
Contact your representative.
Right. Make your voice heard.
Have these conversations.
Even if it's just with friends and family.
It all makes a difference.
Okay, so it's that ripple effect.
Exactly.
Every action, no matter how small,
Can have an impact.
it all feeds into something bigger.
That's the idea.
And I guess that brings us back to the beginning.
Full circle.
Right. Are we hardwired for self-destruction?
$1,000,000 question.
It is. But maybe, just maybe,
Maybe.
by embracing this stuff.
Critical thinking, media literacy,
Yeah.
civic engagement.
We can change the narrative.
We can write a different story.
And maybe, just maybe, that story has a happy ending.
We can hope.
We can definitely hope.
That's a good place to leave it, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Any final thoughts?
Just that, the future isn't written yet.
It's not.
We have the power to create the world we want to see.
So what are you waiting for, listener? Get out there, learn, act, make a difference.
And remember, even in the face of these huge, overwhelming challenges, there's always hope.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
As always.
And until next time, keep those minds curious.
And those actions impactful.
See you next time.